Okay. Hi. Hello, everyone. My name is Julianna, and here I have a bucket. Now, I have kicked the bucket. I am passing on the bucket to my friend Chris here. Come this way. I'm going to cross over to the other side of the bucket. Does anyone see what I'm getting at here? See, these are all euphemisms that we have to refer to the death of another human, or sometimes pet, usually a loved one. And there are plenty more that delve into the depths of absurdity. Take, for example, bought the farm, went to the happy hunting grounds, liquidated, and my personal favorite, living challenged. In my research, I even found will not shop at Walmart anymore as a euphemism for death. And I mean, it's true. I just didn't think it would be coined as a saying. And while I can appreciate the original thought behind most of these, when taken out of context, they are really strange and sometimes humorous, which can take away from the seriousness of the topic at hand. Of course, maybe that's the point. Euphemisms definitely have a place in our language, particularly if you're trying to make light of a heavy topic. We use phrases like these to communicate ideas that we would rather distance ourselves from. Take, for example, your friend comes over to your house and asks where your family dog is. You're not going to say, "No, don't worry about it, man. We killed him last week." You're going to say that you put him down. Or maybe you're at one of those awkward family reunions and your long-lost aunt comes over, asks where your father is. You're not going to say, "Please, he was smothered under the front end of a Ford Focus." You're going to say that he's no longer with us, or, "Dear God, I very much hope so." But I'm here to tell you that maybe we shouldn't be distancing ourselves from the thought of death. And before I begin, let me just say that death is terrible, and it is perfectly okay to not want to think about it or to not want to talk about it, which is why we use euphemisms. Euphemisms themselves aren't bad, but the reason why we use them might be. Today, we have put an immense amount of barriers shielding the topic like thick cement walls, so much so that in some cases, deaths are deemed unnatural. Think about when people say, "She was too young to die," or "He was perfectly healthy." See, there's this thing called the optimism bias, which about 90% of the population has. It was recently studied by Dr. Tali Shiro. It's a bias in which we severely underestimate the likelihood of unfortunate circumstances actually occurring to us. It also affects our intake of information, such that even though we were just told that there's a 20% chance of us having a heart attack within the next year, it's not going to happen to us, right? And see, this is the problem with distancing ourselves from death. We don't believe that it will happen to us. In Western society, we have convinced ourselves that we live in a perfectly safe environment, which to some extent is true, don't get me wrong. I mean, we're safe from major conflict and from war and most natural disasters. But just because you're not going to be killed by an earthquake in suburban Mississauga does not mean that the world isn't dangerous, and it does not mean that deaths are ever unnatural. Now, I just want to take some time here to clarify that I am not a murderer. It was pointed out to me that the topic of, or the title of my presentation is suspiciously threatening, like, some people have to die. You know, why'd you kill your father? Well, some people have to die. And I'm not trying to be a downer either. But if you perceive me as such, then it's probably because of the huge taboo that we have put on the topic. But was it always this way? So let's think back to our ancestors, who thankfully gave us the flight or fight reaction, which gets us out of dangerous situations by pumping adrenaline through our bodies. Without this reaction, we as a species would not have evolved to the point where we are today, because our ancestors would have just kept on dying. I mean, yes, not evolving now would mean that we do not currently have wireless internet. So the fight or flight reaction is a reaction that stems directly from the desire to survive. So obviously, for some biological reason, our ancestors knew that living was the thing to do. And it would make a lot of sense if our ancestors were more accepting of death. because they faced its reality on a daily basis. I mean, think about how many life-threatening situations they would be putting themselves into. Yes, they would still grieve at death, which is natural, but acknowledging the likelihood of their demise and the demise of others ensures them a quicker recovery process from the loss of someone that they knew. Before I finish, I want to end off with one last example here. So, over the summer, Robin Williams' death made newspaper headlines across the globe. It was believed and now confirmed that he committed suicide, which seemed so unnatural for someone as lighthearted and joking as he. Now, Robin Williams had been in therapy for depression and was being treated for his illness, but despite this, relapsed into a depressive spell, subsequently killing himself. But the conversation surrounding his death largely consisted of how he could have been saved, or how his death could have been prevented. And while I'm not an advocate for suicide, I don't see how his death could have been stopped. I certainly believe that most suicides can be prevented, because the victim is often blind to other solutions that they might have to their problems. But Robin Williams, as a 63-year-old man who's lived with this illness for most of his life, do you not think that he would have been wise enough to see his own options? Robin Williams had to die, but this was not accepted by society because we choose to force the idea of death from our minds. Now, I'm not going to tell you that, you need to live your life to the fullest or some other cliche like that, because I don't really care what life philosophy you follow. I mean, if you have one, that's great. But I'm not here to talk to you about life. However, by accepting death, we would be making living easier. It's contradictory, but true, especially for those who are already dying. And well, we're all dying, but you see what I'm getting at. Your grandmother on her deathbed would be so much more relieved if she knew that you would be okay without her. Now, I don't know your grandmother, and I don't know her personality, but what I do know is that some people have to die. And that's okay. Thank you.